A woman vanishes from a locked beach house, doors bolted from the inside, no signs of escape, no crime scene. Police say she walked away, and the case goes cold for decades. But when the house is torn apart years later, something hidden beneath the floor changes everything, and exposes a truth no one was looking for. Before we begin, I want you to do 3 things. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because stories like this don't just disappear. They wait. They wait in silence, buried beneath ordinary floors, behind locked doors, and inside secrets families refuse to speak about. On a quiet stretch of the American coastline, there once stood a modest vacation home, nothing fancy, nothing suspicious. But one summer night, something happened inside that house that would haunt investigators for decades. The doors were locked from the inside. The windows were secured. No signs of a struggle. And yet, by morning, one person was gone without a trace. For nearly 30 years, this case gathered dust. Friends moved on. Officials shrugged. The public forgot. Until a routine renovation uncovered something that was never meant to be found, something that flipped the entire narrative on its head and exposed a truth darker than anyone imagined. Tonight's story isn't just about a disappearance. It's about assumptions, about how gender stereotypes misled an investigation, and how the real monster was hiding in plain sight the entire time. Stay with me until the end, because the twist in this case rewrites everything you think you know about victims, villains, and who we choose to believe. Now, let's begin. Adrienne Cole was 36 years old when she vanished, and by all outward appearances, she had everything neatly arranged. A successful freelance interior designer, Adrienne had rented a small cedar-shingled beach house just outside Cape May, New Jersey, hoping for a quiet reset after a turbulent year. She arrived with her longtime partner, Marcus Hale, telling neighbors they planned to stay through the end of summer. On the evening of August 14, 1996, witnesses recalled nothing unusual. A nearby shop owner remembered selling them wine just before sunset. A neighbor later told police she heard laughter drifting from the deck sometime after 9 p.m. By midnight, the house was dark. The next morning, Marcus called 911 in a panic. Adrienne was gone. Police arrived to a scene that made no sense. The front door was deadbolted from the inside. The windows were locked. Adrienne's purse, shoes, and car keys were still in the house. Her passport sat untouched in a kitchen drawer. There were no signs of forced entry, no blood, no note, nothing to suggest she'd planned to leave. Marcus told detectives Adrienne had gone to bed early after an argument, and when he woke up, she was simply gone. Within hours, rumors spread through the tight-knit beach community. Some whispered about a voluntary disappearance. Others suspected foul play. But without evidence, investigators were left with a mystery that would soon grow colder by the day. Detectives returned to the beach house later that afternoon, this time with fresh eyes and growing unease. At first glance, the interior looked staged in its normalcy. The bed was made. The wine glasses from the night before sat rinsed in the sink. Adrienne's phone was charging on the nightstand, alarm still set for 7 a.m. It was the locked doors that bothered them most. Every possible exit had been secured from the inside. Even the old sliding patio door, known to jam, was latched tight. Investigators tested the locks themselves. No tricks. No malfunctions. Whoever left that house hadn't walked out. Marcus Hale remained calm during questioning, almost unnervingly so. He repeated the same story, a late argument about money, Adrienne going to bed, silence afterward. He insisted he'd slept through the night and only noticed her absence when the sun was already high. Police searched the surrounding dunes and shoreline. No footprints. No discarded clothing. No signs of a body in the water. The ocean, that early in the morning, was calm, too calm for an accidental drowning. Without physical evidence, detectives leaned toward the easiest explanation. Adrienne had left voluntarily. A stressed woman seeking escape. A classic narrative, one that conveniently ignored the impossible logistics of how she vanished. By the end of the week, the beach house was released back to the owner. The locks were opened. The case, quietly, began to cool. In the weeks following Adrienne Cole's disappearance, Marcus Hale didn't leave Cape May. Instead of returning home, he extended his stay at the beach house, telling friends he couldn't abandon the last place she'd been alive. To some, it looked like devotion. To others, it felt unsettling. Police conducted multiple interviews, but Marcus never slipped. His timeline never changed. His emotions never escalated. He cooperated, answered politely, and even volunteered to take a polygraph, though the results came back inconclusive. What quietly raised eyebrows was what Marcus did next. Within 2 months, he hired a contractor to make renovations to the beach house. He claimed the memories were too painful and said remodeling would help him heal. Floors were replaced. A cracked section of the living room subfloor was reinforced. New hardwood went in, erasing the original layout entirely. At the time, no one objected. Adrienne was presumed missing, not dead. There was no crime scene to preserve. Friends of Adrienne, however, were uneasy. She had confided to her sister weeks earlier that she felt trapped in the relationship. She'd mentioned Marcus's temper, not violent, but controlling. Notes in her old planner hinted at wanting space, maybe even leaving him. Still, without proof, Marcus remained a grieving partner, not a suspect. By the end of the year, the case officially went cold. Adrienne Cole became another missing woman, her name slowly fading from headlines, while the man she lived with stayed exactly where he was. As months turned into years, Adrienne Cole's disappearance settled into a familiar, uncomfortable category. Missing, presumed voluntary. Investigators quietly closed active leads, citing a lack of evidence and an overburdened department. In internal notes, one phrase appeared repeatedly: adult female, likely left on her own. Gender played a role no one wanted to acknowledge. Detectives theorized Adrienne may have staged her disappearance to start over. A fresh identity. A clean break. It was an explanation that required no suspect, no crime scene, and no accountability. Marcus Hale, as her male partner, was viewed through a sympathetic lens, the abandoned man, not the potential perpetrator. Adrienne's family pushed back. Her sister mailed letters to the department every year on the anniversary of her disappearance. She insisted Adrienne would never leave without contacting her. Never leave her car. Never leave her shoes behind. But each plea was met with the same response: there's nothing more we can do. Marcus eventually remarried. He told neighbors his first partner ran off. Over time, even he began to sound convinced of it. By the early 2000s, the beach house had changed hands again. New owners. New paint. New floors. Whatever secrets the house held were buried beneath renovations and time. And for nearly 3 decades, that's where the truth stayed, waiting beneath the surface, untouched, unseen, and dangerously quiet. In the spring of 2024, the beach house underwent yet another renovation, this time by a young couple planning to turn it into a short-term rental. What started as cosmetic upgrades quickly became structural when a contractor noticed uneven flooring in the living room. As the old hardwood was pulled up, the crew uncovered a section of subfloor that didn't match the rest of the house. The wood was newer. The nails were different. Beneath it was a thin layer of concrete, something that had never been part of the original design. When they broke through, the smell hit first. Construction stopped immediately. Police were called. Beneath the floor, wrapped in heavy plastic and construction tarp, was a human body. The remains were skeletal, but enough was preserved to tell this was no accident. The body had been deliberately concealed. Dental records confirmed what Adrienne's family had feared for nearly 30 years. It was her. Investigators quickly realized the chilling implication: Adrienne had never left that house. She had never escaped. She had been there the entire time, hidden under the floor while life carried on above her. But the most disturbing revelation came next. The concrete layer had been poured after her disappearance, during the exact renovation Marcus Hale had commissioned weeks later. Suddenly, the locked doors, the calm 911 call, and the rushed remodeling took on an entirely new meaning. The case was no longer cold. It was alive again, and this time, it was pointing in one direction. When investigators reopened the case, Marcus Hale was the obvious suspect, at least on the surface. But forensic analysis complicated the narrative in an unexpected way. The medical examiner discovered trauma inconsistent with a struggle between a man and a woman. The fractures were precise, controlled, and the cause of death wasn't blunt force or strangulation, it was poisoning. A fast-acting sedative, administered in a measured dose. That detail cracked the case wide open. Phone records revealed something overlooked in 1996. Adrienne had made several late-night calls not to Marcus's phone, but to a payphone near the beach. Calls traced to Evelyn Marsh, a close friend who had visited the house days before the disappearance. Evelyn had been described by everyone as gentle, soft-spoken, non-threatening, the kind of woman police never considered capable of violence. What they now learned changed everything. Evelyn had been romantically involved with Marcus, and secretly obsessed with Adrienne. On the night Adrienne vanished, Evelyn was in the house. The locks were secured because she never left. Adrienne had trusted her. Evelyn administered the sedative, panicked when Adrienne stopped breathing, and hid the body under the floor. Marcus didn't kill Adrienne. He discovered what Evelyn had done, and chose to protect her. For decades, investigators chased the wrong assumptions, the wrong gender, the wrong story, and the real killer walked free, until now. When detectives brought Evelyn Marsh in for questioning in 2024, she was 68 years old and visibly shaken. She hadn't expected the house to ever be touched again. She certainly hadn't expected the floor to give her away. At first, Evelyn denied everything. She claimed she barely remembered Adrienne. But hours into the interrogation, the walls began to crack. When investigators placed phone records in front of her and renovation receipts tied to Marcus, her composure collapsed. Evelyn confessed. She admitted she'd been in love with Marcus for years and resented Adrienne deeply. She told police she only meant to talk that night, to scare Adrienne into leaving. The sedative, she said, was supposed to make her sleep, nothing more. But Adrienne never woke up. Evelyn described panicking, begging Marcus for help. And instead of calling police, Marcus helped her hide the body. He reinforced the floor. He poured the concrete. He locked the doors from the inside to stage an impossible disappearance. For nearly 3 decades, they lived with the secret. Evelyn married someone else. Marcus remarried too. Both built lives on top of a grave. The confession stunned investigators, not just because of the crime, but because it exposed how easily assumptions had allowed a killer to vanish in plain sight. Justice, delayed, was finally catching up. The trial of Evelyn Marsh and Marcus Hale gripped the nation in a way the original disappearance never had. Headlines focused less on the crime itself and more on the question everyone kept asking: how did this go unnoticed for so long? Prosecutors laid out the timeline with chilling clarity. They showed how Evelyn's presence at the house had been dismissed, how Marcus's renovations were never questioned, and how gender stereotypes shaped every early assumption. Jurors heard recordings of the original 911 call. Marcus calm, controlled, almost rehearsed. Forensic experts testified about the sedative, explaining how the dosage suggested intent, not accident. Renovation specialists confirmed the concrete layer could only have been poured by someone with access and time, someone who knew no one was looking. The defense tried to argue panic, fear, a tragic mistake followed by bad decisions. But the jury struggled with one undeniable truth: this wasn't a single moment of terror. It was decades of silence. When the verdict was read, the courtroom was still. Evelyn Marsh was found guilty of second-degree murder. Marcus Hale was convicted of accessory after the fact and obstruction of justice. Adrienne Cole's name, absent from headlines for decades, finally returned, this time as more than just a missing woman. She was heard. In the months following the convictions, the beach house sat empty once again. The new owners walked away from the property, unable to live with what had been hidden beneath their feet. The house was eventually sold to the state and scheduled for demolition. Adrienne Cole was laid to rest beside her parents, nearly 30 years after she disappeared. Her sister spoke at the service, her voice steady but resolute. "She didn't run away," she said. "She was erased." Public criticism of the original investigation was swift. Former detectives admitted mistakes. Leads ignored. Assumptions made. Training protocols across several departments were quietly updated to prevent similar oversights in missing persons cases. What lingered most was the realization that Adrienne's case wasn't unique. Experts pointed out how often women's disappearances are minimized, especially when there's no visible violence and a convenient narrative to explain them away. Marcus and Evelyn would spend the rest of their lives defined by the secret they thought was buried forever. And the beach house, once a place of rest, became a symbol of everything that happens when silence, bias, and time work together. The floor had hidden the truth. But time always finds a way to break through. Stories like Adrienne Cole's don't just end with a verdict. They linger. They force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that justice isn't always denied outright. Sometimes it's simply delayed by assumptions, silence, and who we choose to believe. For nearly 3 decades, a woman's life was reduced to a theory that fit too neatly: she must have left on her own. And because that narrative was easy, no one looked harder. No one questioned the locks, the renovations, the people who stayed behind. If this story unsettled you, it should. Because cases like this aren't rare, they're warnings. Warnings about how quickly certainty can replace curiosity, and how dangerous it is to assume we already know the ending. If you believe Adrienne's story deserves to be remembered, like this video so it reaches more people. Subscribe to the channel for in-depth true crime deep dives that go beyond the headlines. And turn on notifications, because the next story may be one you've never heard, but should have. Most importantly, share this video. Start the conversation. Ask the questions investigators didn't. Because sometimes the truth isn't lost. It's buried, waiting for someone brave enough to dig it up.